Now, it's time for the Anchormen podcast with Matt Gaetz and Dan Ball.
We're doing something completely different on today's episode of Anchormen. We've been talking about the homelessness challenge in California from almost every angle. We've talked to lawmakers, community advocates, we've talked to people in the law enforcement and first responder community, but we hadn't talked to someone who had actually lived out the experience of being homeless in the state of California day in, day out. We didn't know what to expect when we met Jackie recently, and we found someone who is deeply caring, deeply thoughtful, and who thinks about a lot of the questions that may be on your mind and maybe on the mind of people who are having to somehow wrangle the intersection of great wealth and opportunity among some, and then others who have fallen through the cracks. In this discussion, I found a piece of my own humanity, and I hope you will too. This is my favorite interview I've done on Anchormen. Enjoy. So I'm here with Vish and I'm here with Jackie, and we met Jackie. Vish and I were at a comedy club in La Jolla, California, and we met Jackie on the way out, and you were like just as interesting as everybody we just heard from in the comedy club. So we wanted to come chat with you, and what we always like to do is just ask folks who you are, where you're from. Just tell us a little bit about your life.
There's a lot to pick from, so if there's anything particular. I'm originally from North California. My mother's up there in Cloverdale. Turned 50 this year, so I've got that half century of experiences to draw from. But I've just had an extremely varied and colorful life. So if there's anything you want to know about,
tell us about the moments that you find most interesting or colorful in half a century on Earth. Yeah. What do you look back and say makes the highlight reel?
Well, I'm homeless at the moment, unfortunately, and one thing that people just don't seem to get, even if they say they get it, they don't really get it, which is that basically anybody could be homeless, right? And when people say they get that, a lot of times they think, oh, sure, anybody could have a drug problem or anybody could be schizophrenic. And it's like, well, no, like anybody could, like, even if it's very unlikely, literally anybody could find themselves in a position where they just don't have any more options. And that's just sort of where I landed after living in my car for 3 years. During the pandemic, like 2020 to 2023, I was traveling the country, living in my car, working a lot because living in your car is expensive. So I was mostly just doing DoorDash and Uber.
What are the costs of living in your car? Is it
like hotel, food? It's like every couple days you want to get a hotel room. Eating out is super expensive, and also just like out of boredom, I just work all the time. So I wasn't really enjoying the experience, but still it was by choice. It was like.
That was a choice you made during COVID. You decided you wanted to live out of your car and kind of make your car into your business. And
I had to move, and I was facing it was like, well, I'm going to have to move to.
Why'd you have to move
back to the West Coast? Just like my wife had left me in like 2018, and then I was staying with somebody, and just like the situation where they had to. They were going to have to move, so I was just going to have to move.
I see.
And it was just time. It was time to get out of the area. Time to get back to the West Coast, and that turned into I was like, well, I'm just going to take my time about it. And as I was just going from place to place, like St. Louis to Vegas to Boulder, just traveling 6 months at a time in each place, I was just enjoying that part of it. Where I was like, well, I don't want to just stay here. And then unfortunately, my car. I thought it was just the battery, tried to fix it, had no more money, had to junk it. That was in Vegas, and that was 2 years ago. And
so you don't have a car anymore?
Right. Because the last time I was out here, I lived in Ocean Beach 10 years ago, and that was one of the last times I was out here successfully. I thought, well, this is a place I know. This is somewhere I can come back to,
Well, compare for me, the experience of living in the car for 3 years versus what you're doing now.
In a lot of ways, it's funny. It was actually more stressful and harder because when you're living people don't realize, like, sleeping on concrete, you get used to that pretty quick. Like, just physically, it's not uncomfortable. And once you get used to, like, finding a place that no one's going to bother you, it really becomes a bit of a, like, minor inconvenience. But when you're living in your car, you can't really, like, put your car somewhere without scrutiny. So you're always having to, like, move it. You're always having to, like, go from coffee shop to coffee shop, and you got nothing to do, and you've got no way to have a social outlet. So it's just it's very isolating. You spend all your day just sitting in your car, and in a way it's worse than being on the street, because you're not even encountering people. You're not even getting that you're not even getting that part of life.
So if you had the money, like, it doesn't sound like a car would be your next purchase.
Well, it probably would, just because it would let me go right back to work. Just because I still have, like, active DoorDash and Uber accounts, I could just, like, go right back to that. So
I've noticed that. I've noticed that, Vish, that, like, in America today, the car is a really big dividing point for a lot of Americans because of what Jackie just said. Like, if you have a car, you are a few clicks away from being able to generate some revenue.
And even if it's not DoorDash, or even if it's not strictly car-based, if you have a vehicle, it's so easy to think, well, if this person needs this, and I can get this cheaply here, put it in my car, transport it here. The American, it's like the American dream. It's like capitalism. It's not easy to do that if you don't have a place to, like, store your goods. But, like, I've certainly noticed a lot of things where I could, like, well, I could probably make money by, like, I see a need here, I could fulfill that need by, transporting one good from there to there, or I could, like, do something like, I'm a tarot card reader, so I've always had that option of, like, well, I can do entertainment. And when you don't have a car, you don't have any kind of base of operations. There's just no way to like, have a legitimacy.
How would you even describe your base of operations now?
Non-existent.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky in that I have, like, an area of town where I feel comfortable in, and I've been in the same area for, like, like you said, I've been there for, like, 1.5 years at this point. And it's good to have the option of, like, oh, people know you, and if I was ever, like, God forbid, like, bleeding or something, I think that I could, like, probably say, hey, you've seen me around, can you call an ambulance?
Well, there's something interesting about that, but before, and I want you to react to this. I just was talking to a friend of mine about some of the homeless problems that they have in OB or in other parts of Southern California. They say,
OB is really bad.
And they say, you know what? We have our people that we know that are in the area that we know aren't trying to hurt anybody. Just like Jackie said, somebody who could be in this situation for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And we don't worry about those folks. They're here. We know them. There's a familiarity. It's when, we had, like, a ton of migrants, of illegal aliens who were living on the streets that didn't have any real familiarity with the community. And it's when sometimes you just have this huge tourism push where at certain times of the year, you get kind of a traveling group of people that don't have that same kind of connection. Do you think people think about it that way?
Oh, yeah, no, I know this firsthand, actually. So when I first moved to Staten Island, in my neighborhood, on my block, there was exactly one homeless person that everybody in the neighborhood knew. His name was Johnny. And, we'd call him Johnny, give me $1, because every time you'd go walk by him, he says, hey, brother, do you have $1? So, there's a church at the corner of my house. And whenever church would come out, some of the congregants would go over to Johnny and say, hey, would you like a sandwich? Would you like some? They would try to help him. He lived there for, give or take, about 6 or 7 years. The thing is that people in the neighborhood knew who his family was, too. And they would always go to Johnny and say, hey, you have a sister in Pennsylvania. Why don't you go live with her? His sister would come down and try to convince Johnny to come back with her. And he would say, no, I want to stay here. I want to stay here. And he would live on the street. So that I was never scared of Johnny as a kid growing up because everybody knew Johnny. It was, and it was fine. But this homeless tourism aspect that you see now, which is incentivized also by some weird laws in New York or some weird laws in California or some vibes in California per se, I think that is actually actually what's kind of hurting, what's hurting these localities that are dealing with this homeless problem en masse.
Do you know other people who like live around your area who are homeless as well? Is there like a community to it, or is it isolated?
Well, that actually that kind of ties into something that what he was saying, that brings a couple things up, where what people don't. One thing that's really that is, I think, important to understand is that I think that we should solve the easiest problems first. And when it comes to because I've met a lot of homeless people, and to be honest, the vast majority of them are not like me, are not, off drugs and sane, and unfortunately. But here's the thing. If someone is in a position like I am, where all it takes is a job, or all it takes is if I had, housing, I could immediately get a job. The only thing that's keeping me from a job is nobody is going to, and I've had to hire people, so I know this is understandable, but no one's going to take a chance on a homeless person just because if you don't know where you're going to sleep, are you going to come into work tomorrow? Very understandable concern. But that's what gets me is there are a lot of homeless people who have very, very difficult challenges. Let's put it that way. And that's a problem that's going to need to be solved. But why not solve the easy one first and find the ones that are like me and figure out some pathway? Because right now, there's just not a pathway for me to get off the street. There's not there's no...
What would that look like? Help us understand what that would look like.
For example, in the UK, what they've had for a long time is they have government work agencies where they, you go in and they help you find a job. And we just don't do that in America. I've never understood why. But it's just not really a thing that we're not really.
No, we have those. We have those in this country.
Well, right. But it's not in the same sort of easy institutionalized way. It's more of a lot of it. When I've tried to go to some programs in this county, they're like, "Well, do you have a drug problem? We can get you into a halfway home." And I'm like, "No." Yeah. And they're like, "Do you have? Okay, are you schizophrenic? We can get you SSI." And I'm like, "No, I'd rather just have a job." And they're like, "Well, we can't force anyone to hire you because there's no incentive. There are incentives to hire people who have problems.
Yeah.
There are tax breaks for that. There's no incentive to hire someone who's just homeless. And they will never admit that, generally speaking. They'll be like, "Oh, well, let's keep at it." But there's no it's just not a thing. And I've never understood why.
The problem is you're a normal cisgender homeless man, and therefore there's no outlet for you or no incentive for these programs to help you.
I think it's something more sinister than this. Based on some of the feedback we've gotten from policymakers in this area, there is a homelessness industrial complex.
That's it. Right. That's what it is.
You already know what I'm going to say before I'm going to say it.
There are, because here's the thing. You look at someone like me, in a lot of ways, I am a pretty normal person, and I don't mean that in an exceptional way. If you're going to talk about a program to help someone like me get a job, they're going to say, "Great, what makes him any different from all the other people who want work? Why not just apply and just go? And if they don't want to hire you, well, too bad." And I think that what that's overlooked, or what that's not seeing, is that there are. And I don't want to sound like I'm being unhumble or like I'm being arrogant, but there are homeless people like me who are, I went to UCF on a full scholarship based solely on my SAT scores. I didn't even get good grades. There are homeless people who are very intelligent, very willing to work. I've worked my whole life, and yet even for me, there's no I can't go and sign and go to the SSI office and say, "Hey, look, can you help me with this job search?" Because they'll be like, "Well, that's just not something we do." And
they'd rather get you on a program.
Right,
they'd rather get you on a government program.
Right. They'd rather get me on
SSID.
disability.
Yeah.
And if there's no pathway for someone like me, how do you expect the people who have it worse? How do you expect what are we going to do with them?
Well, aren't they just going to follow the system into some halfway house rotating cycle?
And the thing is, we're not even doing that intelligently. What I was thinking about on the way here was we need to think of some rather radical new ideas. Like when it comes to the homeless people who are truly like so mentally unwell they can't even integrate into society. And I met one of them today. Like I meet them every day. They are very taxing on because they only bother other homeless people. They don't bother quote unquote normal people that much. They mostly bother each other. So anyway, when it comes to someone like that, why not, if we're going to have to hospitalize that person, if we're going to have to get them some kind of like mental health help, why not at least turn that into some kind of revenue, like give them the option of blogging all their thoughts? Because as well as I do, everyone in the world loves to watch other people on YouTube. We love to just watch other people. And there are people who are doing it for free. So why not, just think of things like that. Well, if they can't get a regular job, if they're so mentally unwell that they can't even, wash dishes, for crying out loud, at least give them, all right, you're going to be in a mental health hospital, and then we're going to turn that into revenue. Instead of being a drain on the system, we're going to actually create money. We're going to give them the option to blog their thoughts and ideas, take the ad revenue from those videos, put it back into the,
This is an incredibly creative idea,
right?
To take the economy of content creation, and to take a population
apply that to fix a problem instead of making it worse.
I don't know what the world looks like if we arm the homeless population in this country with the technical capability to blog and put stuff on the internet. You have talked with me a lot about how Twitter has changed and Instagram, I would say TikTok, because there's so much stuff that isn't really thought provoking, but is just captivating.
Yeah,
that's what it's based on. That's the foundation of the entire platform.
Is that what we're talking about here?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There is value to the content that captures you, but might not, spring off some philosophical thoughts or create new knowledge in the knowledge base out there. But that does perform well amongst many people all across Earth, right? When you consider that pool.
Well, there will be some who watch this and say, well, wait a second, how technically deft is the homeless population? And so maybe talk to us a little bit about how many people you observe who are also homeless, who have a cell phone, who have a laptop, who have a Wi-Fi hotspot. How is the communication stream going now?
Pretty much everyone has a cell phone because they have the at the very least you can get the government phone, the free government phone.
So the government of California is giving,
or it's not just the government. They've partnered with those companies,
right,
to where the companies are actually making money by giving the phones away for free somehow.
Yeah, no, they're paying all the people who are paying taxes, right, are paying into that system, and then so everyone has a cell phone,
right? But that's not. But most people don't actually take advantage of that. When you're homeless, people look at me and they're like, well, you've got a phone, you've got this and that. And I'm like, well, I don't drink or do drugs. A lot, when you're homeless, you're not generally having to, if you see a homeless person digging in the garbage, it's generally not because they have to. That's generally some kind of choice in their head. And
why is that? Because food is
well, no, because even if you're homeless, you can make money. There are ways, even if it's panhandling, there are ways to make a little bit of money.
Is that the way most make money?
I would say, I play music. I've got the guitar thing, but I would say most will just do recycling. Of the ones that I see doing anything besides just, a lot of them are on SSI, but the ones that are actually doing things, they're just recycling. I get why they're on SSI. It sounds like when you go in to get a job, they're trying to shoehorn you into those things, and I want to go back to a really interesting point you made, that if someone was making a hire, because you were providing a case study in what a job does for a human being when you describe what you would do with a job and how it would dramatically improve your life, right? And so that's one thing is people what do you want out of life now that you're in this situation? And again, I've only been homeless for 2 years. I've generally had a fairly normal life.
I wouldn't make it 2 nights.
No, I know. But then people are like, well, what do you... And I think at this point, and just after 2 years, I'm thinking back to times in my life when I had a quote unquote crappy job and a crappy apartment, and I had a girlfriend, and I'd go to my best friend's house every night and we'd drink a six pack, and I thought I had it bad. And I'm like thinking, like, wait a minute, I would kill to be in that like I would kill to just have a crappy job and just like wake up every like, oh, I just got to go to work and just make money and come home. Like that's all I have to do. That's all I have to worry about. That sounds great.
Yeah.
But at the time, like I never and there have been times where I've had to like sleep on couches or in my car, but I've never been in this situation before.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got in this situation that I realized, like, all those times that I was, like, complaining or that I thought that things were not all that great, and I was like, wow, I have a really boring life. But at the same time, it's like, well, maybe boring isn't so bad sometimes, Like, there are...
Do you think people are ungrateful?
I mean, not that I was, but I just didn't have the capacity. It's not that I was ungrateful, I just didn't even realize, like, the difference in... Like, because, you look at like, oh, it must be bad to be homeless. People don't realize it's not the sleeping on concrete. It's not the having to panhandle, none of that stuff. That stuff is all manageable because you can set a goal and you can just do it. The part about being homeless that people don't realize is so awful is that you're just not treated like a quote unquote normal person. There have been people I've met in the past 2 years who had things in common with me and should have been capable of like just becoming my friend, so that I have like, hey, that thing where like once a week someone's like, hey, you want to come over and just drink a beer? To have even having that in my life again, like just that sort of like basic humanity, that's the sort of thing that people don't realize. When you're homeless, you don't have that. The only people I ever interact with are other homeless people. Mm-hmm. and very rarely, like I've said, and I don't think it's just bad luck because I've met so many people. It's just never, I never meet other homeless people who have like this level of capability of like talking without going off on some bizarre psychotic,
I have
belief that they have.
I have. I mean, there are some people who think my beliefs are psychotic, but
sure.
I've talked to people who are homeless.
Like every now and then, I'll meet a homeless person who, like, I'll talk to them for 30 minutes, and I'll be like, oh, okay, they get it. They're all right. They're pretty chill. But then all of a sudden, like something that is just so not real, they'll start talking about it, and I'll just realize that's why they're home. It's like because there's something, and again, I know that, as eccentric as I am on my worst days, I'm not anywhere close to what these people are having to go through, and I feel sorry for them, but at the same time, it's like a lot of what people go through is self-inflicted, and if you're deciding to have a loser's script, and if you're deciding the world is against you, if you're deciding that, because as bad as my situation is, quote unquote bad, I never wake up and think, man, I hate being homeless, I want to die, this sucks. I wake up every day and I'm like, well,
how do you spend your days?
Let's go get what people don't realize is that a lot of homelessness is just wandering from back and forth, because it takes so long to get from place to place. A lot of your day is just going back and forth from one place to the other. Like if I have to go hang out at the library because there's, if I don't have money, I can't hang out in any other like restaurant type of place or coffee shop. So like, okay, like walk to the library, that takes 30 minutes. Then, oh, wait, I got to go use the bathroom at the CVS because that takes 15 minutes. Got to wait 20 minutes for the bathroom. And all these little increments of time add up so much. There are a lot of days where I don't get anything done. And I'm like, where did all the time go? And it's just all those little things that you don't realize are a problem.
The mundane things that just getting through them is actually what takes up your time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what was the last eventful day that you had?
Trying to think. Like, you mean in a good way?
Yeah, well, in a good way, in any way.
That's the thing. It's unfortunately, I've settled into such a routine. I can't even think of like an eventful like.
Well, what's the most scary?
During the hurricane? Now, last year, remember that hurricane came through last year.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was super amusing about that, like I said, at that time I had just hit the streets after like 2 months So it's just like my car goes, and then 2 months later. And at that time, like I said, still had DoorDash and Uber accounts. And when that hurricane hit, people were so terrified of leaving their hotels. I was able to make like $60 just walking some deliveries from like, to the beach and back. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that was a pretty good day, and that's what it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that there are so many little ways to make money that, like the biggest challenge for me is not like, and I'm talking about honest ways.
Yeah.
There are a lot of homeless people who do dishonest things, but even, and that's an option, but even like if you're talking about just honest ways, the biggest issue is not making a little bit of money, it's having some kind of purpose, having well, what am I making money for? Because there are a lot of times I think about, like, oh, maybe I've got $2 and I'll play Powerball. Like, what if I win? What would I even do with it? And at this point, I'm like, I don't know. What would I even spend this money on? Because once you get disconnected from that everyday, like, oh, this is what reality is. Like, you just do this and this and this, and you like have that security. Then you just like stop wanting things in a sense. Like, well, I guess I'd get a car or a house, but then
What do you want? What gets you excited, or what do you look forward to?
I don't know.
Vish, what do you look forward to?
I look forward to waking up every morning and trying to make a difference, trying to either change the conversation or inject some or move
Vish
the needle.
has to be in the fight. Vish, let me recast what he's actually saying. What he's actually saying is Vish wakes up every day figuring out where he thinks he can deploy his talents to a fight that he cares about that matters.
Yes, basically.
Well, you know what? And if everyone in the world did that, because that's what gets me down a lot about the state of the world, is that there is so much that could be fixed if everyone just cared.
Yeah.
Because most people just don't care. I don't know how.
Why do you think that is?
Like,
It feels recent.
I was going to say, if you're familiar with Adam Curtis, the documentary filmmaker, he's got a documentary called "All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace," and it traces how, based on like things that started in the 50s and 60s, mostly in like Silicon Valley and the tech industry, how we've learned to base our society on these very simplistic systems and models of the world that we came up with before we really had we had simple computers, we had simple ideas, and we came up with these simple systems, and we still believe in them even though we have learned that they're not accurate anymore. Like these models of the world that we thought, or models of nature, we thought, oh yeah, Mother Nature is a self-correcting system. Turns out it's not. Turns out it's just chaotic. And and it's not like something that you can predict easily. And a lot of that just came out of just like we had very simple computers, and we just started to believe that the world would operate the way they do, which is like, oh, it's very simple, like social media. Very simple. Engagement, click. If something is clicked on, it has value.
Right.
No other, there's no other like, oh, is it a good idea? Doesn't matter. It was clicked on.
Totally.
And that's the sort of simple thing that we put our faith in. It's like, maybe we should reevaluate that very core idea. Maybe clicking on something isn't inherently valuable. Maybe like that. Maybe there should be a little more to the algorithm than just simple engagement.
Yeah. I think that we've come to create value around that because there is an attention economy, right?
That's right, because it's so easy to make money off of it. If you make a fraction of a penny off of everyone who watches a video, then there are so many people in the world that's going to eventually be millions of dollars. But do you want to make your life selling something that's only worth fractions of a penny? Wouldn't you rather sell something like? Wouldn't you rather have people give you $10 for like an album or like a book or something of value?
Well, you see how that
like a
translates.
Conversation of value like this,
right?
Isn't it like if you're having a conversation like this, isn't this inherently just a little bit more valuable than some random video that's just flashing on the
Well, you see how that's essentially translated into the world and the market now, right? You have people trying to accrue so many fractions of those pennies via views that
the easiest way,
right? But now they go and do crazy things to try and accrue those views, right? And people do crazier and crazier and crazier things to get those views. So it kind of is a feedback loop that's happening.
That's a big part of that documentary I was talking about. Yeah, it's like the idea that feedback loops are not necessarily a good thing because they just make everything go crazy.
Right.
You know, they tune everything into overdrive because like it just keeps going back and forth and back and forth, and just
Politics is kind of that way too.
Right.
Media is
When
that
things
way.
swing
Social
one way,
media.
swing that way. And another thing I was thinking about when you asked me to be on here is that we are no longer interested in like thinking of democracy as a good idea unless the guy we like wins, right? There are a lot of people who think, well, if 60% of the people vote a certain way and we have this going on, then they're just wrong. And it's like, well, no, maybe it's not about right or wrong. Maybe it's about that's just how the very democracy has to work.
Right.
You have to go with what most people want, and if it's bad, we'll figure that out, and hopefully most people will be smart enough to say that's bad.
And there are examples of that having happened. I mean, we make mistakes in policy, we correct for those mistakes, and we hope we learn. My experience, Jackie, is that it's not that deliberative because of the corrupt influences. You know, when I saw...
I've lost track of the amount of times in my life like that I have thought, politician, this is a great politician. I love this politician. 10 years, 5 years later, I don't know. You know?
Well, and sometimes we learn more.
It's that corruption. That it's just because why does anyone become a politician? I don't know if it's usually for any good reason. I think it's usually for well, maybe not. They become a politician for a good reason, but then once the machinery gets rolling, you don't stay a politician for good reasons a lot of the time.
Right.
It's inertia.
That's
And
very wise.
You become part of this machinery.
Yes.
And at that point, you no longer have your own ideas. You're told this is the party line. This is what you believe. Go talk about it. You know, and you never are. You're no longer changing the world in your image. You're just become part of this two-part, this WWE.
Well, you're just an actor.
It's a WWE.
You don't even...
one side versus the other.
WWE.
Heels versus faces.
This is... We talk about this a lot.
I've said that since I was like 16. Even when I was that young, it was apparent to me. I was like, this whole thing is a scam. The whole thing. It's all just the majority of what happens in politics are not being. The majority of things are not done for any fundamental reason other than distraction, other than, well, if this is what these people care about, let's talk about it and let's keep them busy. And it's so very rarely is it based on let's fundamentally make the world a better place. Because we're talking about entrenched systems, it stops being about improvement.
Do you buy my thesis that it's just about staying in power and making money?
And we have tied. We're in a culture that has tied money to power so intrinsically that is insane.
They're fungible.
They are the exact same thing at this point. If you have a ton of money, you have all the power. And
there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money out there. So people with a lot of money win and lose every day, right? And it's kind of like when you watch a football game, usually the team with the best players wins. But every once in a while, the team without the best players, but maybe had the right scheme, had the right coach, had those stars aligned, they can get the upset. Politics is very similar in my observation that the side with the most money behind them usually wins. And so you've got to use strategy and tradecraft to get around that for things that really do matter. And a lot of times, there are times the moneyed interests happen to want things that are also good for the country.
Sure. Accidentally.
There are a ton of times, and the cause I've committed a lot of my life to is stopping wars that only happen because of those moneyed interests. And we've lived through them during most of my life, right? And I don't want to do that anymore. And it's interesting that you at age 16 already had that keen assessment.
Well, I grew up a lot. I moved around a lot, but I was lucky enough to grow up mostly in middle and high school in some very nice schools who actually cared about education. So, like, I mean, they had me reading 1984 when I was 11 years old.
Nice.
And
Should be mandatory.
And Animal Farm.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I was kind of like, this is a little much, guys. Like, kind of depressing. Like, you really want to put this in me at this young age.
You were ready for it,
But at the
Jackie.
same time, like, having already, like, being, like, at that young age, being told, yes, look, history is written by the victors, you know, and it's never about, like, once one party gets into power, it stops being about improving the country and just becomes about, it's just a job. You just go and you clock in and clock out.
Are you a man of faith?
And look, I know that it's never been true that philosophers were ever politicians, right? Like, that's probably something that's crazy to hope for. But wouldn't it be nice if the people who went into politics were literally the people who thought the most about the most complex things in the world?
Yeah, but I know
like
too many
philosophers.
I know, but I know too many philosophers that like couldn't
practical.
figure out how to do the dishes.
Yeah.
Right? Who who couldn't fry a piece of chicken.
No, I'm not talking about university.
Who's like the closest that we have in politics to like our philosopher king?
Steve Bannon.
There you go. See, he loves Steve Bannon. All right, I wanted to ask you about this. Are you a man of faith? Do you pray?
I'm a Gnostic Christian, yeah. So.
How does that inform your daily life?
I came to it in a really roundabout way. When I, like you talk about when I was 16, until I was probably 19 or 20, I was an agnostic. I grew up thinking I was a Christian, but I didn't really care. I grew up in a Baptist church and I was baptized and went to church and had a good experience.
So you accepted the Lord in a Baptist church? I mean,
right. Well, I did that.
Yes.
And then
How old were you when you did that?
I got baptized when I was 11.
Okay.
That was like a choice I made.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it didn't really do that much for me, and I was like, why? And then I went through a period of being an agnostic, and then I sort of came back around to being a Gnostic, not agnostic, Gnostic Christian, through like some people I had read and some, getting into some like more of the older like religious texts, like the original, like the Gospel of Matthew, the not just the Bible, but all the texts from that time period. And I got really interested in like philosophy, and then I came back into like, this basic idea that Jesus came up with is like, let's just be good to each other. That has merit. That has like that doesn't just have merit. That's like such a big idea that most people aren't even like ready for it. Most people don't really live their life, because think about it. If everyone in the world really lived like in this pure way and I know it's unreasonable to say everyone, but let's say 90%. If 90% of the people, if every time they saw like something bad, like some horrible injustice, that they were like going to figure out how to fix it, and not in a performative way, just like, we got to fix that. If everyone just was concerned, if everyone was like, we have to fix all this stuff. And when I say injustice, I don't mean, again, I'm not talking about performative stuff. I'm not talking about, like whatever like trendy topic you want, like I'm talking about fundamental things. Like, it's an injustice to have someone like me, who is very willing to work and capable of working, sleeping on the street when there's like furniture that is being housed, and he's not being housed. And I don't mean that's an injustice in a righteous way. And I'm certainly not a proudful person, but at the end of the day, it's like, would it hurt society that much to help some people like me out who can give back? Because you look at the homeless problem, it's huge. Let's at least start with this 5% who are like me, who can get back in the workforce, who can start giving back, who can start being a boon to society again, instead of being a drain on it. Give me I don't have a reason to live right now. I'm not really that tore up about it, but you ask me what I have to look forward to, and I'm I don't have anything to look forward to. And like, not in a terrible way. I'm just like, that's weird. I don't have anything to look forward to.
I mean, look,
and I don't
different
mean to
people
rattle on, but
no, please, it's incredibly interesting. And when I talk about having something to look forward to, please don't take that as me imposing like.
Oh no, it was a good question.
But just
like people don't really ask me that. Yeah. I'm like, it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, but I remember even in some of my toughest days on the planet Earth, like looking forward to a nice walk, looking forward to a good day of weather.
That's what you do. That's what you learn.
A moment of kindness.
Yeah, I think my situation gets narrowed down to such a point where I truly am not thinking, because I used to, like I said, when I had like an apartment and a job and like formerly in my life, there would be times where I would stress out and I'd be like, man, if I get fired, I might not have a place, I might not have rent next week, and I'd be so stressed about that. And now, even though I'm in a quote unquote worse position, in a way I'm less stressed out because I'm just thinking about, well, what's going on today? Let's see, I've got money, I've got food today. I don't have to worry about that today. So let's just worry about today. And you kind of narrow your focus down like that. And I think it's like, when you say like, I'm not looking forward to anything, it's not in a bad way. It's just like, you just stop looking forward, I think.
I think a lot of people who go through trauma are really going to relate to that description.
Sure.
Because when you're going through any kind of trauma, it just becomes about that central moment of focus.
Yeah, like when I had a really bad breakup when I was like 23. Love of my life. We were together 6 years, leaves out of nowhere. And it was like it was one of those experiences where for weeks afterwards, all I could do was, at the time I was a pizza delivery guy. So all I could do was
We've both done that job.
Drive around delivering pizza, crying my eyes out, just like silently weeping, like stoically, just like, just like I am going through the toughest thing I will ever go through, just because of one breakup. And that's the kind of thing, when you're younger, you can think of like one thing can be such a horrible, but once you go 20, 30 years on, you realize you're going to have a lot of those experiences. And if you don't get used to it, if you don't get tough quick,
You've heard me talk about All Family Pharmacy before, and right now they have totally outdone themselves in a good way. To celebrate Independence Day, they just launched their biggest sale ever. Buy one, get one free on the meds, and you trust these. It's ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, the vitamins and supplements that you use. It means that if you order 30 capsules, they're going to send you 30 more for free. You want 90? You get 90 more completely free. This is the way to stock up, to save, to be prepared. There's no catch, no insurance required, no extra steps, and they've got the doctors who can hook you up with the prescriptions for what you need. This is the kind of access most pharmacies stopped offering long ago, but All Family Pharmacy is doing things the right way. They're keeping it simple, affordable, and giving you the freedom to choose. They believe everyone should have access to the meds they want in their cabinet without the gatekeepers getting in the way. So if you've been meaning to stock up, now's the time. Buy one, get one free. The sale ends July 13th. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Matt. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Matt. Stock up and protect your family today. What's the most scared you've been over the last 2 years?
I've been lucky in that I haven't been very scared. But I will say, I think that's just down to my own choices because, like, I don't go downtown, for example.
There are some scary spots there.
I just don't, and I don't have a reason to. I don't do meth, so I don't have to,
Are most of those folks there on meth?
Most, the vast majority of homeless people are either on meth or are drunks or on fentanyl. And when I say vast, I mean in 2 years, I have not met one other homeless person who was like me, who didn't do that. Who just like, I met one guy who I thought, like, because I used to drink. I don't even enjoy drinking anymore. I didn't quit drinking. I just don't like it, which, trust me, I used to think that was impossible. I used to be like, I'll never get tired of this, But I just don't like it anymore. But I met another homeless guy who's like, he also played guitar. He actually gave me this guitar.
Nice.
And, I hung out with him for several months. And then only when he left town did I find out that he had been like on meth a lot of that time. And it's like, oh, that explains a lot of certain things where I thought he was just, being eccentric. But no.
That's unfortunate because it would be hard to find, like you have laid out a policy prescription to find others who fit your conditions and to have the type of tailored programming that we would have for someone who had a disability, was on drugs, had some ailment, right?
So it's so weird to me that it's so much easier. I've met so many people who say, oh yeah, they gave me a place. It's a halfway house, because I'm in a program. And you try to go to that, and it's like, And I know, like, don't get me wrong, people who are in that position certainly maybe need more help than me in a certain sense, but in a sense, the fact that I don't need much help is why I'm saying maybe you should help me, not first, not like prioritize, but like maybe if it's easy to help someone, maybe help because like I said, you turn around and you're like, I don't know, it just drives me nuts. It just
What do you? I mean, well, I guess you said since you don't go downtown, there haven't been in the suburbs where you spend your time. There aren't moments that give you fear.
Every now and then I'll encounter, like, here's something that this has happened a couple of times now. The other morning, I got woke up. I was where I sleep. I got woke up by this girl who looked fairly normal, looked about mid-20s, dressed pretty normal, like, like had makeup and totally looked like just a normal person walking around. And she started talking to me about, she was like, oh, I know someone who can help you get a job. Come with me and I'll help you. And she had like sort of a strange Middle Eastern accent, or not Middle East, Eastern, like Russian accent. And it just became this very strange situation. And I began to think, is like, are there actually like people who are, I don't know if it was like a trafficking situation, but it was like, it just struck me as very strange. Like, this is not someone who is just like eccentric. She's not just crazy. She's like being very insistent about certain things. She's like, oh, I know I can help you get a job. Come with me. I'll be right back. I'll be, come with me to get a coffee. And, and then there have been other times where I've met people like that. And I'm wondering if is it just, people, because there's an airport nearby and it's like, oh, okay, someone from another country who happens to be mentally unwell winds up on the street here because of the airport proximity.
Oh.
Or is there something a little bit stranger going on? Because
I'm glad you didn't find out. You don't want to wake up in a hotel bed with in a bath of ice with no kidney or something
because
like that.
as strange as like weird as that sort of thing sounds, like those things are not just urban. Like that does happen every once in a while, and if you're going to pick off anybody, I would expect it to be homeless people. So
right, especially when, as you were saying, you kind of are treated in this like outcast
hands-off way. And for someone to be so, and like I said, she was dressed she had a dirty backpack, but she was dressed very nice otherwise, and had like nice nails and like makeup and this was at 6 a.m. Very strange situation.
Yeah. Do you have social media? Are there places that you put out your music or other stuff you do?
I do have an album on Spotify.
Oh, tell us about it.
I put it out right before I came out in 2019, I guess, right before I moved and went on my road trip.
Sure. What's it called?
The name of the band or the project is Airport or Telephone, and the album is Prepare to Be No One. It's still up there on Spotify, so.
Great. How about other forms of social media?
I have a decent phone, so there's really no excuse for me to not like start making videos of like just.
Vish is going to help you get it set up with an X account, with an Instagram.
No, really,
whatever you need.
Appreciate.
Yeah, we'll happily help you. We'll happily help
because I have an old YouTube account, but I don't want to really don't bother using it.
What's going to happen is tens of thousands of people are going to see this discussion, and it's going to shock them. And they're going to want to know more about
honestly,
your story.
I would think that a lot of people are going to be shocked by like, oh, he seems normal. And it's like, because so many people that I talk to are like, you really don't seem like you're homeless.
Well, and no one really comes to this audience looking for normal. If people are following me and Vish, normal will definitely be a shocking thing. I have to know what's your best performing song when you're playing. What's the one that it's the most likely to get a positive reaction from someone?
Blister in the Sun. Violent Femme song, yeah.
Can we get a few bars? I don't make you do the whole thing. Can we get a little Blister in the Sun?
I can do the intro.
All right. We'll take that.
Get the.
Oh yeah.
I'll just get my pick here.
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Yeah, it is out of tune, but I mean, if you want to ever make money in a bar, you don't really have to learn much. It's like 2 chords, and you just play any kind of old '80s song you can,
Nice.
That's
well,
great.
thanks, Jackie. Vish, did you have any other questions for Jackie?
Well, actually, I think I might have stumbled into a SoundCloud account that you had, or
Oh, I did put. Yeah, there's one song on a SoundCloud under my name. Yeah, because I was working on the follow up to that album, and there is one song up on there. Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's what I was. I was trying
me.
to.
Yeah, that is
okay,
Yes,
that's
to our directors, we're going to get all the information for Jackie's music under both of those different projects in when we publish this. We absolutely have to put it in the lower thirds and give people that direction.
absolutely. And I just want to say, man, that, to your point that there is something that you can do to make money even if you're homeless. I'm from New York City, and the
Hey,
homeless.
I grew up in Jersey, so you were
There you
telling
go.
that story earlier, and I was like, yeah, I know exactly. Like, like growing up in the suburbs of Jersey, it's like, yeah, there was like one or two local guys. Like, yeah, it's almost like a protector of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that's him. You know.
But the thing in Manhattan, the homeless there, a lot of them will do some kind of entertainment. They'll
Right.
sing,
Oh,
they'll
they know how to
dance.
make money up
They
there.
they are
Know how to
hustling
make
out
money.
there,
Yeah,
right?
That's a lot of that California vibe. I think it's just people are just not that stressed about it, and I'm just like, if you can make money, just do it. Like I said, I read tarot cards, I play music. Anything that can make you a few dollars, that's like giving value to the world. Like, why not?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, like, it's very admirable that you even noticed that there's that kind of separating factor, and I happen to have noticed it too, and I'm glad that you have some kind of talent keeping you going, man.
Yeah, right on.
You got anybody looking out for you, Jackie? Anybody who you check in on?
My family, like my dad's side of the family, they're not. A lot of times homeless people are like, they're the black sheep. In my case, my family is like all black sheeps. They're like people I would not really want to. A lot of drug use and just not good stuff on my dad's side of the family. But my grandmother's still around. I still talk to her. She's great. She's always been there for me. Basically raised me with my grandfather. So, man, like I said, my mom's still up in Cloverdale. She's got cancer, but totally remission. So she's hanging in there.
You keep up with her?
Yeah.
Always good to keep up with your mother. Always good to check
And my
in.
little sister's up there too.
Well, good. Well, we can't thank you enough for coming by and sharing your perspective on a variety of issues. You're obviously a very caring person, and you're obviously a very smart person and thoughtful. And it's just nice to have a pleasant conversation with a fellow human who has had totally different life experiences. But I think there's something collective about our humanity, and I think you've shined a light on it in a really interesting and thorough way.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that for a homeless person like me, like the those of us who are rare but who can have a conversation, that's what I miss the most, is just talking to people.
Yeah.
Like if I had like people to talk to once or twice a week, that would do so much to settle my mind about my situation.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed talking to us. Some people do sometimes, and not everyone does.
Right.
But we would like to continue to check back in with you and see how things are going. And as a lot of these policy questions are addressed regarding how to help
We didn't
people.
even really get a chance to get really into politics,
Yeah,
I would
this
have liked
isn't.
to have.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of more interested in
Just chilling.
just the nature of humanity on this.
Sure.
We weren't gonna quiz you on the
I was
news
kinda
of
like
the day.
preparing myself
Yeah, I
all
wasn't
the way
like,
here.
all
I
right,
was like,
Jackie, I'm gonna need to know exactly how you break down the Diddy verdict.
Right.
No, I really just cared more about your story, and that's probably way more interesting than
Oh,
the news
sure.
of the day
Yeah.
to people.
For
But
sure.
but as those things do arise, and as those opportunities come to us, we'd really like the chance to check back in with you. And we're gonna work to get you on social media. It was your idea to have more content creation among your community, and so Vish is going to help get you on social media. We're going to put your social media on, and you're going to get a whole lot of new followers who will be interested in the things you have to say and want to communicate with you. Thanks for being on.
All right. Thanks.
All right, that's it. That's a wrap, man.
Want to see more great videos like this? Click on the link below to subscribe to OAN Live and watch Dan Ball's Real America and The Matt Gaetz Show on Dish Channel 212. Tune in, subscribe, and watch today.
I'm so excited when we get our Merriweather Farms shipments in. You get a beautiful piece of ribeye. Look at that marbling. Now, I take it out of the package, let it get down to room temperature. All I've got on here is a little salt, a little pepper, and then a little avocado oil. And then I've had my pan preheating with a little oil.
Head to merriweatherfarms.com and enter promo code MattG